Well, welcome to lesson 3. Lesson 3, we are continuing in our introduction to hermeneutics, and we're going to be talking about looking at scripture. A little bit of a review from last time. We talked about the difference between exegesis and eisegesis and hermeneutics. Talked about the difference between grammatico-historical and redemptive historical hermeneutics. And we talked about the analogy of faith. Today, we're going to talk about one method of remembering how to do and remembering the steps for a grammatico-historical interpretation. This is meant to guide the interpreter through these steps. Look, language, occasion, outside, and keys. We're going to explain all of these here as we go along. First, language. Language deals with the grammatical aspects of the passage. Here, the exegete is looking at the genre of the passage. Prose is read differently from poetry or prophecy. The latter has its own challenges that the Gospels do not, and vice versa. Each genre is examined in the latter half of this lesson, or latter half of this course. The challenges of each genre will be addressed along with keys for understanding and applying them. At this point, the exegesis will find it useful to read the passage from multiple translations. 4 or 5 solid English translations will help the reader to get at the original languages before ever looking at the Greek or the Hebrew text. Multiple translations will reveal words that may be difficult to translate, have multiple meanings, or have a broader meaning than one English word can capture. This, of course, is not meant to replace the use of original languages, but only direct their study in the original languages. The interpreter should outline the passage to understand its logical flow. Look for changes in topic and tone. Look for transitional elements. Look at how the author structures his writing. As you look for the main point of each section, identify subpoints. What subpoints does the author make to prove the main point? Look for repeated words, phrases, and themes within the passage, but also from a larger context in the book. Repetition, especially in Hebrew literature, is a form of emphasis. If a word is repeated, it may be meant to focus the reader or the listener's attention on a concept. It could also be a play on words or the same word used in different ways. When considering large portions of scripture or whole books, repetition of themes is key for identifying the author's purpose for writing the particular biblical book. Occasion. Occasion means looking at the historical and cultural features of the book. The exegete should notice places where the cultural geography and historical landscape are different from the modern day. The historical, geographic, and cultural features may directly affect meaning and will certainly affect interpretation. It's important to recognize the primary audience. To whom was the author writing? Or was the intended audience the same situation as those in the account? This could be the case with historical books. How would they have received the book? We also need to consider the idea of primary and secondary audience. A text cannot mean for us what it could not mean for them. When we say the primary and secondary audience, we are referring to the fact that there is a difference between how they would have received the text and how we should receive the text. We need to determine what it meant for them and then bring that into a modern context in order to be able to make accurate interpretation. Outside. Look outside of the text for help in understanding and interpreting the text. We can do this once the initial observations have been made. It's time to look outside the text for help in understanding and interpreting the text. The exegete may consult lexicons and grammars, Bible software, commentaries, histories, encyclopedias, and dictionaries. Lexicons, grammars, and software will help sort out any linguistic issues. Good commentaries will help with the language, context, and cultural issues, as well as interpretations and applications that the commentator has made. Commentaries are not meant to do the work for the exegete. Commentaries are tools. Commentaries can be wrong. Commentators can often disagree amongst one another. Older commentaries may not have the same cultural historical information that more recent ones have. Commentators are also a product of their times and their training. Their works will be reflective of what is happening in their world as they are writing. Their theological stance will be evident in their commentary as well. The exegete should evaluate what the commentator says against their own training and reading. Good tools are great, but not every tool is a good tool. This is also the stage where the interpreter should look for other portions of Scripture that may add initial insight to the passage. The analogy of faith enters at this point. Cross-references, footnotes, and Bible software are helpful in that endeavor. Sometimes commentators will point to the exegete the other related passages. A look at the immediate context of the passage at hand is wise. What immediately precedes or follows the passage can be a key in understanding the relevance of a given passage. Now to keys. At this point, the exegete should be able to identify the keys in the passage. This is really a summation of everything that the exegete has learned up to this point. Who are the key people? What do they have to do with advancing the narrative or making the author's point? Are there key details that the author uses to communicate their message? What are the key ideas and themes? How does the author communicate them? These are all the ways in which we begin to get at the key points, the key elements for understanding, and then also for applying. Well, what's the next step? The exegete is ready to begin translating the key points, ideas, and themes to a modern Christian context. The details may not be the same, but the essence of the passage has something to say to all people of all times and places. The movement from interpretation to application begins at this point. Now, what I'd like you to try is to look at Psalm 28, 1 through 4. Or, sorry, we'll make that the whole section, 5 through 6. And apply look to this passage. Language, occasion, outside, and keys. And see how well you do applying these things to a very familiar passage.